So it turns out that this CSS actually works. It's not valid, the validator doesn't like it at all, but it works, and this is not down to a bug. This is performing according to the CSS specification in every browser. Okay, but what does it actually do? Well, it applies a 0-pixel blur radius to the body element. This doesn't look like much, but we can actually see that this is actually what's happening. If we take this code, keep it at the end of the style sheet, but add something else before it, something with a different filter value, then we can see that we end up with 0-pixel blur radius. Let's check the computed styles. 0-pixel blur radius. Not quite no filter, but a filter that we can't really see anything from. This is not no filter, it's just a filter effect that doesn't have anything that's visually apparent. So, what's going on here? How do we end up with 0-pixel blur radius from CSS that looks obviously broken? Well, I was just trying to build a form with an input element that takes a filter value. This is simple in principle, but how can we actually validate that whatever's typed in there is actually a valid filter value? Well, my idea was to use css.supports. This is basically the JavaScript equivalent of an add_supports rule in CSS. We can put in either a complete add_supports condition or just a property and a value. We'll get back a boolean that will tell us if the browser supports this particular combination. And when it comes to the filter property, the browser can only support filter functions that actually exist and that actually are syntactically valid. Well, this was at least what I was thinking. At first, this appeared to work, but imagine my surprise when this also returned true. And even more wild, other seemingly broken variations on my filter function also tended to return true or false with no apparent rhyme or reason. To me, this made no sense at all, so I just pivoted to build a crappy workaround while people on Mastodon continued discussing this behavior, and they eventually put me on the right track. First thing I didn't know was that apparently all arguments to all filter functions are completely optional. There's default values that make sure that a filter function does something even if you don't supply any inputs. Hi, post-production Peter here. There's one tidbit of information that I just came across and that I have to share with you. The default values for the filter functions are not all equal to their initial values. For some filter functions, like grayscale, the default value is 100%, where the initial value is 0, no grayscale at all. And the reason for this behavior for certain filter functions is Instagram, content creators. Who would have thought? Back to the main thing. Next, I read the CSS syntax specification, and what I found in there actually blew my mind. When it comes to the CSS parser and how it consumes different tokens, it turns out that there's actually no difference between handling the end of input and a closing curly brace, or closing parentheses for this matter. If you wanted to, you could leave out all closing curly braces and all closing parentheses at the end of your style sheet. And this explains why my broken blur function actually works and is supported by CSS. Closing parentheses at the end of the style sheet, in this case, don't matter, and the missing argument is replaced by the default value of 0 pixels, and therefore it's reported as being supported. Well, problem is, this only works at the end of a style sheet, so I cannot really accept this result. I can't take this broken filter function and plug it into the middle of a normal CSS rule. This will just break everything. So, final thing, the workaround. This is actually rather simple. Just take another filter function and add it after the filter function you actually want to test for. This works because we don't really care about the visual effect of this filter syntax. We just want to verify that every part of the value is supported and syntactically correct. The second function is just there to make sure that the first function actually causes breakage if it's invalid, if the parentheses aren't all closed. So if you ever need a JavaScript function to test whether or not a CSS filter function is valid syntax, well, this is it. CSS is awesome. Thank you for watching. See you next time.